The story of the flood and the Mabul is over there, because we bump into all these cultures. Okay, I don't visit China so much, but we're working on it. Okay, but can you see what I'm saying? We bumped in. Well, we weren't great. We got stamped on, but we left. Really, we got stamped on, right? But we left our mark on their boot, and they left their boot on us. It's a whole other story, but I want you to understand. So these are the two great ancient civilizations: Mesopotamia and Egypt, hieroglyphics and cuneiform. Comment?
So do you actually do tours for the kids?
So Nick does. I've done tours for teachers. Nick Avery, I've taught her to do it. She takes tours of the British Museum, right, different times of the year. But I've got ones in our brochure for adults. Again, I want to teach adults so that you could bring in some of this stuff into your classroom, and you can bring stuff for children as well.
You do it for teachers? Okay.
Yes, I do it for teachers.
I just looked on Wikipedia on ziggurat, and it has a really interesting fact that you could bring into the teaching, is that the high point, the flat point, was to escape floods. So
that's one possibility, yes.
So if you're doing a marble and you want to have even a picture of it, you could have little ziggurats.
It's going to be safe.
And people, they're desperate. God's going to save them. But
there's one midrash that says that it says Migdal Bavel might have been an attempt to stop. You know, the waters came from above and below. So basically, the world collapsed. So you need something, a pole. You know that bit of Star Wars. You need something to stop it from squishing together. Okay, apparently I know. Of course I know, right? Squishing together. Okay, so that's what the thing was. It could be to do with that height to get away from main waters as well. And by the way, the Euphrates and the Tigris overflowed very often, right? So the flood story is very much related to that area as well. So let's keep going. So what are these dog biscuits? They are in the British Museum, these ones. Now the great question is this: if we were around in Mesopotamia and Egypt, do they mention us in any of cuneiform dog biscuits or in any hieroglyphics? Are we ever mentioned at all? So archaeologists aren't sure, but there's two famous ones. One in cuneiform and one in hieroglyphics. And I'm going to show both of those to you now. Okay? So these are the Amarna letters, right? Written on clay tablets, right? Dog biscuit shape. Now, every year in the school my daughter goes to, Independent, they do a competition for Chanukiah. And every year my wife's an artist, we make it out of quick drying clay. So you can buy for a couple of pounds quick drying clay. We're going to get to that, okay? Just think this is very doable, right? Because in Egypt they would write on stone, they would chisel it on stone. But in Mesopotamia, you've seen the rivers, right? There's lots of clay. It's by rivers. You pick up a bit of clay, you pack it together, and you write on it, and it goes hard. If you drop it, it's massive. If you don't drop it, it's around thousands of years later. And I told you there are 2 million dog biscuits in the vaults of the British Museum, and they're translating them all the time.
So hang on, so
right?
they spoke to each other, but they had to both speak each other's languages.
Very good. So, interestingly, where were the Amarna letters found? In Egypt. What are they doing in Egypt? Because they wrote in different languages. Well, because there was business and trade between the two. They found quite a lot of cuneiform writings in Egypt, and they found hieroglyphics in Babylon and everywhere, because they transferred between the two. And the trade journeys, right, were through Israel. There's the map, right, going through here and around. Travelling was the whole time. This was the modern Western world, and Israel was a very important place because of travelling through and because of the ports as well. Right? So, let's keep going. Right? Yes, these are Amarna letters. They're the correspondence between Egyptian administration and its representatives in Canaan, because Canaan at the time of the Amarna letters was under Egypt. Ramses II conquered Egypt, Israel. I don't know if you know that. We must forget this. The Pharaoh, Israel at the time was under him. Okay? Now these letters were found in Upper Egypt. Upper Egypt is actually south, not north. So because it's from where the Nile comes from. Okay? They were written in Akkadian, which is one language I told you of cuneiform script, about 14th century BCE, right, time of Yaakov, and they contain the first mention of a Near Eastern group known as the Hapiru, or the Habiru, right, who might have been the ancient Hebrews, due to the similarity of words and their location. And in the British Museum upstairs, where you see the Amarna letters, that's what the museum says. This is understood to be the origin of the ancient Hebrews. So it's not some rabbi saying it, it's printed in the British Museum, right there. Right? Is it definitely true? No, nothing's definitely true, right? But it's a suggestion that's right there in the museum. Okay? Now.
And they were what? They were like a tribe that were...
So they were a roving tribe that would attack the Egyptians, were an independent group. And they might have been similar to us, to the Hebrews, Ivrim of us. Okay? Now, here's how you write it in cuneiform. Right? Now, how do you write in cuneiform? You use a reed. It's a kind of triangle edge to it. You take your clay and you press it. It's just one shape. You see, it's just one kind of shape that you do, and you change the angle in which you do it. Like this, like this, like this. Unsurprisingly, on the internet, there's lots of videos of literally how to do it. Of taking a piece of clay, scoring out the lines, and writing with it. And then it dries. Quick drying clay that's in your school anyway, with a reed or equivalent piece of wood that you could easily make. Do you know where I'm going with this? Yeah? Am I making it pretty clear? Okay. Right? Now in the Torah, Avram's called Avram HaIvri. Right? He's a Hebrew. That's our name. He's not called Yisrael, because that's Yaakov's descendants. It's much later we become Bnei Yisrael. But our older name is Ivrim. Right? Midrashi from the other side of the river. Ivri. Right? But our Piru and Hebrew, or Ivru, they think is a similar in the language, could be similar. Okay? Now, this is very complicated, okay? They don't have a simple correspondence of one letter and one object. They did what's called phonograms. I'll show you how it works, briefly. You've got ka, ke, kul, ku, and ak, ek. I can see better on mine. Ak, ek, uk, and uk. Now the idea is that you take the first letter here and you add it to the beginning. So it's got a K, the second one is that's too small here, so it's G. So that would be ga, ge, gu. That would be ba, be, bu. So it's phononyms, and you put them together. Right? So Raphael would be ra, fa, a, el. So the first half is the beginning half, and that's the second half. So with the M, the second half, that would be for M, that would be ma, me, mul, mu. And that would be in the other end. Now em. Yeah? You can put the beginning or the end, the letter. Right? Again? You follow that? So I'll say it slowly again, just one more time, let's do it. You see the top line? See the letter C as interchangeable with the letter along here. So it's C-A, C-E, C-L, and then change it to B-A, B-E,
So what is a B?
B-L.
What is a B by itself?
That's the point, it doesn't exist. Right? In Akkadian, it's only phononyms, there is no letter. Languages are different. Okay, if you've got translation is such a fascinating thing. There's a very good science fiction movie, which is not really at all, called Arrival, which came out a few months ago, which is all about what would happen if aliens landed, and how would you literally communicate if their language was fundamentally different. The order of time was fundamentally different. What would that mean? How do you communicate with an ancient culture? It took a long time until they cracked cuneiform. Okay? Hieroglyphics is famous. Right?
How do they such a thing?
Right? By looking at lots and lots of texts and comparing things. So, very briefly, hieroglyphics, they did it how? The Rosetta Stone in the British Museum. It's a stone which was written, I think, 1st century BC, which has hieroglyphics and Greek. And they could read Greek and they could do hieroglyphics, so that's how they worked it out. There's a similar, called the Behustan stone, which has cuneiform, Persian, and then Greek, and they could translate it. It was done by Major Henry Rawlinson. He was a general who took 3 years to translate it. Anybody here a fan of Gilbert and Sullivan?
Yeah.
Pirates of Penzance? The model of a modern major general? He can translate a washing board into perfect cuneiform. That was written by them about Major General is Major Henry Rawlinson, who 5 years earlier had translated it, and Gilbert and Sullivan put it into their play. That's what it's about. Right? I was so excited when I read that, so that's a great story. Right? But the point is, so it got translated, so they cracked the code. Right? They cracked the code of hieroglyphics and cuneiform. But cuneiform is harder because there's different languages within it. Right? But this is Akkadian. Now, it's very complicated, and this is a more advanced one, so maybe you just want to stick with numbers. Okay? Right? And you could do, and there's a website, there's always a website, of maths. Cuneiform maths. So you don't go for language that's too complicated. You might just want to, they get to write out 2 things. Their name, and you might do the work to work out what their name is for them. Right? Their name, or the word hapiru, or a number, or a bit of maths in cuneiform writing on this tablet that you would do. Okay? So cuneiform activities, learn, right? Learn, how many time? Okay, learn basic Akkadian phonograms in order to write out keywords, right? Or do some KS2 maths. And again, there's websites that you can test literally on this, by the way, because they just print out the cuneiform and you have to enter the answer. So if you understand the thing, you can translate it. So you're doing mathematics as well as college at the same time. You're overlapping some basic math equations. You can do the math that they were doing in school, and they could do it in this form. Pardon?
Cross-curricular.
Exactly, cross-curricular, right? Or you can actually make tablets of clay and do this, little ones that they can write and draw, right? And you can use a reader or stylus to do it. There's a great video, just watch the first 5 minutes, the second half's about other gods you might not like, but the first 5 minutes is a really good thing for children, or you to watch about how they would make it, and they would tell their stories and the reasons they would use. And maybe write a short message or even a prayer, right, in this little tablet. So that's ideas of what can be done for this to bring it to life. Okay, do you want to do 2 more? You getting fast with this? What do you see?
Something that's rubbed out.
Right? There's really bad pictures of it now. It's a real shame. It's really hard to see actually. I should have brought you more pictures as well. It's a brick. It's a stone brick.
There's something imprinted in it.
Absolutely. Can you see something over here? Some kind of shape
J.
printed. Okay? Some kind of shape. So this was found in Egypt. Right? And it was in the British Museum on display. From year, when I first visited in 2001, it was there. And I think in 2006 they took it away. Right? And I said, what's happened? They said, well, it was a temporary. They said it was a temporary exhibition. I said, I looked it up. It's been here 25 years. They said, yeah, temporary. Right? Because the British Museum, like us, think in a long period. So it's underneath now. Okay. I could get hold of the brick and bring it to LSJS. It's a brick built. It's a Ramses II brick, as we'll see. It's actually free to borrow objects in the British Museum. The object's free. The only cost is insurance. Right? The actual cost is just insurance. Just Dr. Zarum, it's fine. How much is it? About £10,000 a day. Okay, maybe I won't do it so soon, right? So we can't. But in theory, an institution, LSJS could borrow it. Even your school could, as an English institution. Right? But
Can you visit to see things that are downstairs underneath?
no, you have to do a special tour. You can do special tours to see it. But again, there's not that much to see on this brick. And that's why the picture does it quite well. But what's our story now? What's the brick made of? We know what it's made of. It's made of mud and straw. Right? Straw was needed to thicken, and you can look it up, and we know this historically, that in Egypt, the mud needed thickening of straw to make it hard. Okay, which immediately brings us to, as you know, right, the pasuk, right? Teven am lilbon halavanim. They need straw to make bricks. So there's 3 aspects: mud, straw. Now, how do you know which brick it is? So what I would do in school, by the way, is bring in a brick. Right?
Cheaper to insure.
Right? Just any old brick. Why? What is on every brick made in this country? Right? A number, right? And a code of where it was made. There's a Channel 4 program I saw years ago about a guy who collects bricks. Because it tells you when it was made and what it was used for. They've got an origin. So you show them that every brick, you want to show what this brick was made from and where it was from. So you bring a modern brick as an example, right? And say, now this brick has a picture on it. What is that picture? It's very hard to see, but I'll show you in a minute, okay? And these bricks were used in, and you know the whole story. When Moshe and Aaron went to visit Paro, and Paro complained about, "You've got time to visit me? I'm going to make it worse. You've got to have the same quota of bricks, but now you've got to collect the straw. Instead of us giving you the straw, you have to collect it yourselves." There's a story that talks about that issue of how much work they had to do, and they had no rest. Look at the beginning bit in the first pasuk. Hem rabim ata am haaretz v'shavtem otam misibotam. Right? Right? There's people are many, and you want them to rest from their burdens. I'm not giving them any rest. What word can you see in there? Shabbat. It's the origin, the issue. Shabbat is a rejection of Egypt. It's a rejection of slavery. That one day a week, all of us are completely free and do not have to work. That's why Friday night we talk about Tziyam Mitzrayim. It's directly connected, right? So it's in that pasuk as well. And we talk about the quantity of the bricks, right? And now we can see these bricks. So this is, now, we don't know which pharaoh is the story of going out of Egypt. There's many pharaohs, and we have a list of all the pharaohs. We have it from the 2nd century Manetho, a list of all the different pharaohs in different dynasties. But the 19th dynasty, that period is around the time of Exodus from Egypt, and the key pharaohs are Seti I, then Ramses II, and then Meneptah. And so many archaeologists think that Ramses II is the most likely Paro, especially because there are buildings called we build store cities of Pitom, Piatum. Atum was an Egyptian god, and Ramses as well. So Ramses II is the most likely figure of the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. And this brick is stamped with his cartouche. Now, a cartouche is your brand. Cartouche is the word used. It's always got a line around it like this, which has the hieroglyphics of who you are. You can have one name or 2 names. This is his long name. Usamaptra Setepenere Ramses Memanum. It's a long name, okay? Like you know, Queen Victoria, Empress of India, and all that kind of stuff, right? So, but this cartouche, this first part, is Ramses II's cartouche, is on that brick. And every brick is stamped with it. And he did a lot of building. All over Egypt, there are statues of him and objects that he built north and south. And by the way, there's even buildings he didn't build, but he scraped off their cartouche and rebranded it with his own. Okay, we know people that do that, right? So that's what he did. So he was a huge builder. He's in the right period, in the right place, because he brings his kingdom to the north, the Delta region where we were in Goshen, right? And it's most likely Ramses II as the person. And this brick tells that story really, really well. And we have pictures. Now, the original picture I got from the internet said Israelites making mud bricks. And I blotted out the word Israelites. Why? Because maybe it's not Israelites, right? But this is definitely making mud bricks. Now we know who it is because underneath it tells you who the person is. It's Thutmose III, who was in the generation before Ramses. So this was going on even before. Slavery in Egypt was a big industry. It was the kind of like the grand central station of slavery. There were slaves from all over the Middle East in Egypt to do these big building objects. Because you need people to build these things, right? It's not easy to build a pyramid, right? There's a lot of slave labour. So this is an example of the bricks and making the bricks, right? And forming them, putting them out, and how it was done, right? So we have these stories.
So
And here it is,
you're
Ramses
trying to
II.
prove
Pardon?
that it's not like you
I'm not trying to prove anything.
Okay, you're not trying to prove that it was.
I'm trying to say the story that the Torah
Jewish
tells.
people
Right?
making.
No, yes, I don't know. And I can't prove from that picture. We know from our story that we were some of the slaves. It wasn't just us. Right? There were other slaves as well. You think of the bigger picture, but we know our story. Right? When it talks about making bricks out of straw, that fits. That's how they made bricks in ancient Egypt, out of mud and straw, and baked them to be hard. Right? This is a big picture of Ramses II in the British Museum. That hole was when they drilled it in to drag it onto the boat. So it's a long story. Anyway, I'm going to tell you stories about how to use that. But since we're in Egypt, 10 minutes. Yes. I'll show you some other objects as well. So at the same time, and I'll show you this. What's this? This is about this high. Okay, it's called a stela, which looks like the Moabite stone. It's a different stone, and it tells a story. What pictures can you see on it? Again, the screen isn't right here. It just looks like dots. Looks like pharaohs. You've got the hat things, and this is all hieroglyphic writing. Okay, and on a highlight, there's still a bit of it over here. It's a long story, and the king tells a story of his great achievements. And this king in the middle there is King Meneptah, who was one of the sons of Ramses. He had 60 sons. Well, I know you say, oh, Ramses, the story, he killed his son. Well, he had lots of wives and lots of sons, right? Lots of firstborns, right? So it's very interesting, okay? So our story, there's always a bigger picture, but it doesn't necessarily preclude other issues. Anyway, so Meneptah was the king after Ramses II, and he writes in this text, it's over here, I've enlarged it, this bit over here. This bit over here. Now do you read hieroglyphics right to left or left to right?
Up to down? Down to up?
You can, no. Sometimes it's even up to down, down to up, if it's on a column. But normally it's either right to left to right, the answer is both. Right? It's the way an ox will plough a field. The word for it in English is bustraphon. Bustraphon means the way an ox will plough a field. Right? Because it goes backwards and forwards, right? So at this point you're going from right to left on this column. Okay? Right? You have two leaves, an eye, a feather, a bird, thing, and then two people squatting. Right? Now, this is called a determinant. And again, you can get books for kids on hieroglyphics, made for children hieroglyphics. And just like we have vowels to help you know how to pronounce the word, so they would have a picture at the end that tells you what it is. Is it a building? Is it an animal? This means a what? It's got a woman squatting, giving birth, that's what women do, and a man waving his arms about, because that's what men do. Still. Okay, pontificating, waving his arms about. Right? And this means a people. Right? Not a country. There's a different object for a country. This is a people. It's the people of Israel. Israel. Right? Which we might think might be Yisrael. So I've shown you one object, remember in the Amana letters in cuneiform form, of Ivri, Abiru, and there's one in hieroglyphics of Yisrael. Right? And again, archaeologists think this could be referring to us because the translation is, right, Israel is laid waste, his seed is no more. what are you going to say about the fact that you haven't got slaves left in your country, they've all left? You're going to say, they nearly destroyed us? No, we got rid of them. Right? You tell it your way. So that's their version of it, okay? And this is found in the Cairo Museum. Meneptah was the son of Ramses II, and that's the story of this Meneptah stela. Now, just short of time, so I'm going faster. So, this is very important, by the way, and this is very educational for the children. A lot of children don't know this, and it's so fundamental. What are we called? Are we Hebrews? Are we Israelites? Or are we Jews? So put it in context. We were originally Hebrews, Ivrim, that's the Pasuk, we also had an early Bereshit. Then we became Bnei Yisrael, true descendants of Jacob, so in terms of who they were. And later, at the end of the Tanakh in Esther, we're called Mordechai ha-Yehudi. But the word Yehudi doesn't come earlier. So we were known as Jews later. In the middle we were known as Yisrael. Originally we were known as Ivrim. So that fits. The Amarna letters, which at the time of Jacob were called Ivrim, whereas in Egypt we're already, after 200 years, Bnei Yisrael. So again, I'm not trying to prove, I'm trying to show you we have different names. Even if you don't teach anything I've done so far, just this table, children should understand what we're known as. And they go, well, why were we Hebrews? You say, well, it's weird. English people speak English, right? So sometimes the language, and so Hebrew is our language now. So sometimes that flicks. You understand different contexts. It makes sense. Okay? So again, that's useful for understanding the historical context. And then activities. Make mud bricks. Now you know fairy cakes. You get that mould, kind of plasticky mould. You put it in the oven and it goes hard. So you can get a square mould. You could make mud bricks with kids. And you can make a cartouche and a stamp, right? Or even just make the bricks. On Seder night, they can sit on their Seder table and make things out of their bricks. Okay? So the bricks are a lot of fun things to do. Again, hieroglyphics, right? There is a much more, there's debates about how you translate, but there's lots of versions of hieroglyphics. There's even type in hieroglyphic translator, right? And you type in a word, it translates it. Here's my idea of Seder night, right? Which children can all do. Place names. You get them to ask their parents, right? What their place name is. Now, right, Dina, you write the words D-I-N-A here, and on this side, you type in hieroglyphics and you get the children to write their hieroglyphic name. Now, on the other side, you write again D-I-N-A, but here you get them to write their name in Hebrew. Now yours is the same, right, Dina? Right, I'm guessing. I love that, and you go to you think again, we call him Avraham, what's his name? Yosef and Moshe, you know, we call it. So what do? You put the place name, tell the children, everyone has their place names, and they see the hieroglyphics, and tell them at Seder night, during the night, when you personally feel you've left Egypt, turn over your place card to reveal your Hebrew name. Okay? Now I tell this to parents, and they say, my kid was so not to Seder anymore, and he spent half the afternoon so excited because he did hieroglyphics, he started looking at hieroglyphics and writing everybody's name. You can put Isri up as well. Right? We have to do Yitziyat Mitzrayim, you have to leave it. If you don't get into it, you can't leave it. So you have to understand that culture, understand what we were leaving. So that's the one example of what you can do, the place cards and so on, and that's what I'm describing over here. We've run out of time, can I do this in 2 minutes? You see? What do you see?
Coins.
Coins. What's on them?
Greek, no?
Writings.
Very ancient.
Right. Pictures, what do you see here? Like two shofars, or they're actually cornucopia, they're like horns. Right, and other objects as well. Right? These are Maccabean coins. The way you show independence is making your own coins. So after Maccabees won, after 165, they printed their own coins. Now, no Hebrew coins. Now, you might say, what about shekel in the Torah? That was by weight. Right? They weren't coins with actual value. The value was just the weight of the coin. It wasn't printing anything on it. And coins are much, much later. And these Maccabeans are the first Jewish coins that existed, and there were never any pictures of animals or people on them. Unlike the Greek coins, Athena, of the same period, and the olive, and so on. Right? Theirs all have pictures of animals and people on them, or gods. Ours don't. Fundamental difference. That's what the coin is. It actually has a word in it. Yohanatan, the high priest, Council of the Jews, that's who he was. Right?
So they're the first coins, are they the only Jewish coins?
No.
Apart from
There's coins later on. There's coins at many different times in Israel. And under the Romans, then there was influence, and there were sometimes heads. But our own coins, these are the oldest ones. So with foil and a compass, metal bit, they could actually write on. Now it's a whole other subject. It makes Hanukkah get more interesting, by the way, as well. But I'll finish on this, which is that there is one lovely idea to end with it, which is the ancient Hebrew. The oldest Hebrew is what's called Proto-Sinaitic. Okay, so anyone on the internet, there's a parallel alphabet, and they can start writing in Proto-Sinaitic if they wanted, which is the ancient one. Now, why is this interesting? You'll love this. I'll finish off. This led ultimately to the letters that we have, Aleph, Bet, Gimel. Right? This is the oldest version of it. This is pre-Mount Sinai. And one theory by Rabbi Dr. Marcolina Waknin, who was a lecturer at Tel Aviv University, is that pre-Sinai, our letters were pictures, just like other cultures, hieroglyphics. Post-Sinai, post no more images, we became conceptual shapes. The rejection of idolatry is in the letters. Now, the bull, right, alufim means a bull. Mayim, mem, you know, is water. Gimel is a gamal, a camel. It's not you say G is for, you know, Gimel's a gamal. It's not that Gimel stands for gamal. It's a gamal stands for Gimel. The original letters were objects. That's the point it's making here. Right? So again, it's fascinating to investigate this, but if you're not into writing in hieroglyphics or into writing in Akkadian, you might want to write in Proto-Sinaitic. But letters and language creates depth in a way because it fits things together. Right? And so at the end of this book, what he suggests, again for children, he suggests you can write out your own name in your Proto-Sinaitic. You've got your own name of what you would look like in the ancient world.
Script to know the difference.
Right? So even though I know you say, it's hard enough to get them to write in Hebrew, but actually, when they understand history, playing with more languages makes one language easier, not harder. So these are just some examples of things that you could use.
Phonetic is very, very similar to the Greek, which was...
The Greeks later. Again, another time I can lecture on the origin of languages, but let me just end to you with this book. I'll read you one line and I'll let you go for lunch. Okay? What's this book? Have I shown you this, Simon? This book was given to me recently. It's 1914 from our library. What is it? Objects of Jewish Interest in the Jewish Museum.
Wow.
For over 100 years, it's a lecture about what to look for. The Hammurabi Code had just come out, and so Chief Rabbi Hurst was explaining why it's not a contradiction with the Torah. 1 minute ago. So let me read you the last line. So we do these tours, and I got excited because he quotes the Chief Rabbi, and this has been going on for English Jews for 100 years, seeing these things. Let me read you the last paragraph. It says, I have shown you a few of these objects tonight. Even the most materialistic, the most sceptical among us, how can they fail to pause and wonder at our survival? We are a race that walked amidst these stones when they were alive with the peoples of the past. We are still the living cement that holds these dead stones together. We exist. Shall we allow ourselves to die? Same story that's being told hundreds of years later. So these objects are relevant, everyone's studying them, and they're in this country. So bring it to life. Now go eat. Thank you very much.